I got that. Yeah, heard them call me conscious. I ain't think about it honestly. My thoughts too deep to process, so I do this all unconsciously. Finally feeling God bless. Got 'em woke up dropping prophecy. Don't take it out of context. Just before, I swear they always sleep. Now they catch the message, yeah. Bet that every song is deep. It's levels in each concept, but I can't just never mono theme. I'm trying to lead this flock for the cause, not the following. People upon a partner, and I wonder why they drawn to me. Once upon a time I thought to follow up a dream. Draw life about these lines, nothing twice about these schemes, and like thrice about these insights. What I write is like a blueprint for you to comprehend life. That's light, I reckon make you shine. Never dim it down, even if you live surrounded where everybody vision clouded. Remember staying down ain't quite as good as getting out. It said remember staying down ain't quite as ay. If you believe, yeah. Many doubted it was hard for them to think. Somehow I'm finally getting out of that's it. Usually, yeah, they vision clouded, but as you can see by now, we finally getting out there, writing truth, spreading love. Tell me how you feel about it. Got this music from above, this how I know I'm getting out there, writing truth, spreading love. Tell me how you feel about it. Got this music from above, this how I.
First semester, my junior year, I took environmental economics and environmental ethics.
Oh boy.
At the same time.
Talk about yin and yang.
Yeah. Environmental ethics was a great book. It really, opened up me how I see relationships with the world itself, with other people, with society. It had the effect on me that I think in general, people like to think that college has the effect on people.
Right.
It just opens them up to the world.
Yep.
It piques their curiosity.
Yep.
Right? Whereas environmental economics, it kind of shut me down. It kind of like, it was the only C I got in college. All A's and B's. That one environmental economics was the only C I got because I couldn't, their only lens of the environment is how do we best manage the environment? How do we best manage these resources? Not how do we have a relationship with the environment? Not how do we have because the world is dead. It's natural. It is nothing but natural resources from that particular economic perspective. That's it.
Yep.
So it's the whole class. And in my mind, I'm like, we shouldn't even be looking at it through this lens. How am I going to like take all these details seriously when I don't even think that the lens that all these details are coming out of, like your premise is wrong. All this shit you're talking about is bullshit. So I couldn't get into it. And that was when I decided, all right, I need to finish out and finish my major with this philosophy degree, and I already had enough credits by then for an economics minor, so I just stopped. That was the last. It was not only the only C I got in college; it was the last economics course I took in college. Because I'm done. Done. It didn't. You're not even looking at it through the right lens. How can I take you seriously?
Yeah, I like that. You know, if your premises are faulty, I can't go with your conclusions. So it just makes no sense to me.
It's just like Charlie Brown to me. Nothing that you're saying means anything because you're looking at it through a destructive worldview. You're going to destroy yourself if you keep acting this way. If you keep living this vision. So, anyways, people of the internet, the reason that I got Dan on today is because he is a healer, more specifically a massage therapist, licensed, or I believe you got your license in acupuncture.
Not yet. I'm still in class.
Still working on the acupuncture license. Reiki license, though, right?
So certification.
So we'll debrief what we already talked about while we were not recording and thought we were recording. The reason, like I said, the reason I got him on is he's a healer. I want to talk about, how we met a little bit first, and then we'll get back into why you became a massage therapist, what inspired you to get into the healing arts. I met Dan right at the height of COVID 2020 at a poker game. And he was working at Advanced Wellness Center, which I had previously worked at. So I was like, oh, that's cool. he was a massage therapist there. I was the new patient coordinator when I was there. But yeah, Advanced Wellness Center was a place that was chiropractic, physical therapy, massage therapy, nutrition counseling. They had a gym in there, an acupuncturist, laser therapy. So it was just very focused on alternative modalities for healing. We talked a little bit about this already, but we'll hit it one more time. The very first thing I ever heard out of your mouth was you had gotten your vaccine that day, and I was like, oof, this guy that's a healer is getting this vaccine. I wonder what led to that. I think I was a little bit harsh in my judgment in that moment, but on reflection, I see, even after talking to Alistair, I told you that little story about when you work with people, touching people, that close to people, and the pressure. I cannot imagine. I was working a remote job, so I didn't have that interactive dynamic with the public to where I was always getting pressure. Obviously, there was still pressure on social media. There was still pressure in anywhere you went. You got to get you got to get the shot or whatever. Mm-hmm. You had mentioned just a minute ago that you felt it had diminished your ability to heal.
I felt like it diminished one of my. Thank you for, because I think I said it diminished my capacity, and I wanted to be specific that it diminished like a specific capacity, and I don't know exactly what that was, but I do feel like it impacted this like energy source or container or like vessel that I could more easily pull from. And I think now it's gotten much easier again, but it's like for a while after, I think it was the combination of vaccine and then also getting COVID. And then I think it was probably a combination of those two things.
In what way do you feel it disrupted? Like, I guess try to describe like how it diminished that pool that you're talking about, tapping into that pool of energy. In what way did you feel like you were unable to tap into it as you had previously?
I felt like it was something I was able to do more continuously.
So you would get tired faster?
Yeah, I would get tired faster. And I would pull into that pool more often when I was tired. Versus it like being a continuous, like
blockages were happening more often rather than the continuous flow.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, what originally inspired you to get into massage therapy and then now Reiki and soon to be acupuncture?
Yeah. It's a great question, and it's one that has deep reflection of many different varieties. I think my earliest kind of inkling or tie into that was just being a child and putting my hands out and putting them against the walls and touching things and just like knowing and feeling the truth of having superpowers. Just that like connection with life and the magic of it all around.
And as a kid, you haven't stopped believing that regular powers are superpowers.
Right.
Some adults, we're conditioned, they attempt to condition adults to believe that what our regular, like walking and like talking and sharing a conversation, sharing a meal, like that is all superpowers. You can change like a life with one conversation. That's one of the reasons why I do this. Mm-hmm. Even though I average 25, 30 views, mm-hmm. like what if I've really like impacted one of those lives? Mm-hmm. I don't know. And it's a creative outlet for me too. Mm-hmm. And I really believe in the power of the word. That's one of the Toltec beliefs. Mm-hmm. Something you also mentioned when we thought we were recording, but we're not, is the non-communication between animals and their connection to that field that heals.
Yes. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. Exactly that connection with animals. I mean, at that time it was my dog, and just touching them and allowing them to help guide me into, the areas that felt good for them, or, even a deeper, calmer space in myself. And that's a beautiful way to put it, that animals allow us to kind of connect to that healing field. I don't think I've particularly thought about it in those regards. That's a really...
Well, I think naturally as animals, we are as well.
Right.
But it's our distorted beliefs, the way that we see the world through this kind of, it's hard to even explain because you use language to try to explain it, and it's beyond language. You know, it's something that you just have to feel. Yeah. Even the word truth. Yeah. You know. Yep. Like I do believe in an objective truth, but it's the minute that I try to put it into words, I've subjectified it. Yeah. So. Yeah, I definitely resonate. That reminds me a lot of like in philosophy post-structuralism, and then also in Chinese philosophy like Zen. You know, going beyond the word because it's like you can't even. It's a words. Symbol at best, you know. And even somebody who is impeccable, sharp, razor sharp with their word, at best, they are a clear reflection for that truth, that reality. Yep. Rather than a very distorted reflection, like most people, like most people's projection of that with their words, you know. But even then, you know, when you look in a clear mirror, left is right and right is left. Right. So. That's also a fundamental truth, right? Yeah. So then I think definitely the incorporation of working and touching animals, and I still love working with animals and non-human animals and stuff like that a lot. Then I think one of the next inclinations was I always felt this desire to want to be the person who, or this calling really, to be the person when someone falls down and scrapes their knee, to like help clean them up and like get them on their way, or like, you know, let them go on their way. Just someone who's able to kind of provide, you know, minimal aid in order to help people kind of continue on their journey. You know, and so I think that kind of spectrum of healing is similar to the realm of what I continue to do. Now that being said, I also have done education for like end-of-life care. So that's actually in some ways just like scraping your knee, because right, you know, if life is just all impermanent anyway, you know, life itself is just a knee scrape. But you know, going through that death process with people is a little bit more significant. So I have kind of broadened that. But generally, as a massage therapist, as a Reiki therapist, and maybe not so much, not so much as an acupuncturist, because I think that's where we start to go to like depth and really look at the root causes of things. But yeah, just having that general inclination of wanting to just help people at a superficial level on their journey. And that's, I think, a lot of what massage and Reiki is. Did you ever have any other job, or did you get right into this right after high school, college? Yeah, so I went to school for physical therapy, and then I switched. Right after high school? Or? Yeah, right after high school. I went to school, but I switched to psychology and philosophy. So that's what I got my undergrad in. And then I worked as... No wonder we get along so well. Yeah. So then I worked as a bartender and event planner at a toy store for a year and a half or so. And then I worked at a nonprofit bakery that trained and employed individuals with different abilities or disabilities, legal disabilities. And I also worked at a spa. And then from there, I started into the field of massage. So I did bounce around in a couple different things, some customer service. I was an assistant manager at the bakery. I did some direct service provider training, working with individuals with different abilities. So something that I said when we were not recording that I just want to make sure we throw in there is I mentioned that I had worked at the Advanced Wellness Center, and I may have also mentioned, at least during the recording, I know I mentioned it when we weren't recording, that I had a traumatic feet injury where my feet were run over by a forklift. I was 50-50 to walk again. I say all of that to say I have had, I would guess, about 150, 200 massages in my life, 25, 30, 35 different massage therapists. And this guy right here is there's been a couple that are maybe in his league, barely in his league, but to me, by far the most accurate and pinpointed when it comes to the system of chi, just understanding like how nerves connect to each other across tissues and muscle tissue, blood flow, all of that. You really have a dialed in way of moving energy, manipulating energy, but for positive, for good. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. That really, again, that warms my heart so much to hear. I live for, and that's feedback. One of the reasons why I had to have you on, because as healing being a topic that I want to get more into, like I mentioned, we've talked about it. I've talked about, how a for-profit medical system is really not set up for healing, set up for sick care, not health care. I've talked about that on a more philosophical level, but I was like, let me get my healer on here to talk about some things and see where it goes, and he's the best. So again, that's why I'm doing this.
And then I guess on a more like pragmatic level, so then I went to school. I always wanted to be a massage therapist, but I didn't think it was a career. So I kind of had to go through that process of psychology and philosophy. Actually, ended up being arrested twice, once for manufacturing and distribution of marijuana at plants. And then the second time was a DUI, which I tie very directly to that first incident as well. But anyway, those traumatic events or difficulties or challenges in my life really inspired me to chase my dreams. I was like, what the heck am I doing? So what do I want to do? So that's really kind of propelled me into massage therapy. I was living in Virginia Beach at the time, and I was going to like full moon meditation drum circle type things. And one of them happened to be at the Casey Riley School of Massage, and that's ultimately where I ended up going to massage. It also happens to be one of the best massage schools in the country. I would say arguably one of the best on the East Coast, maybe outside of New York. Just fantastic, directors, staff, and it's founded by Edgar Casey and I forget whatever Riley, who is one of the most documented clairvoyants in history. Was able to do,
Virginia Beach.
Yeah, Virginia Beach, distance healings.
He did a whole thing on Atlantis.
Yep. He's got a ton on Atlantis. He was, I think, one of the originators, or one of the people who really brought into the vernacular the Akashic Records. He was one of the first people to even pull that from the depths and start using that again.
Records.
Yeah, exactly, from itself. So yeah, like I said, he's one of the most documented clairvoyants, and he helped kind of structure the hospital, which later became the massage school. So the routine is very much built around knowledge that him and this doctor kind of incorporated together. So the massage school is technically so unique, it's its own modality. So it's similar to how you have like deep tissue massage, Swedish massage, myofascial massage. You have Casey Riley massage because it has its own kind of unique characters and natures. So yeah, that's where I got my foundation as a massage therapist, and I'm super thankful for that. It's definitely kind of translated into a lot of other opportunities, and I'll toot my own horn there, and just to kind of also validate some of the nice things you've said about me too. Is like, even at that time I was recognized. The president of the school said, you're one of the best massage therapists to have ever come through this school.
Not just me.
Yeah,
See?
yeah, like me. No, and that's because I have such a love and a passion and a natural interest, and I just
and to toot my own horn. I think because I had that traumatic foot injury, every step I take, I feel all of those nerves shooting. I mean, every step. When it's your feet, it's every step you take. You feel it all the way up through your ankles, through your knees, through your legs, through your shins, through your quads, through your hips. You feel it all. You feel everything. And I've become really sensitive to feeling that energy manipulation, whether it's being manipulated in a more balanced way or a less balanced way. And so I feel that gives me a certain level of credential when it comes to judging who's good at this and who's not.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
He's the man.
Yeah, I think what was arising for me when you were sharing that is, I think my general strategy for healing is I try to interface with the boundary or the restriction or whatever it is, and then I just try to push the blockage. Yep. And then I just try to move ever so slightly through it, and then I just back off, and then I come back to the middle. And then just that illustration of the ebb and flow of life is usually enough for the body to do what it wants to do, or the energy. And I think as healers or as people who want to help, sometimes we do too much.
One of the content creators that I follow, he's also started to talk about healing a little bit more. He's always talked about it, but he's into all sorts of truther type stuff. Ben Joseph Stewart, really awesome guy to follow if you ever want to check him out. But he was talking about this program. I forget exactly the name of it, but it was a healing slash human potential. So it's like even taking well people and
actualizing. Yep.
Right. And he was talking about how they've kind of dialed into this 4% number. Okay. So you want to push people 4% past their limit, because more than 4%, they're not challenging themselves enough. They're not stretching their limits. They're not striving for more. They're not going beyond where they currently are. But if you're not pushing them at all, then they're never expanding their potential. But so it's like this. You want to just like that's what it reminded me of when you were talking about the. You just want to push it just enough to where they can stand it. But it's also creating a new space, like getting them out of their stagnation.
And I love that you just put it in the terms of creating space, because I've thought about this at the deepest level possible. That's all I ever do as a therapist. That's like, and I'm not even creating space. Like I'm maybe pointing at space, or
you're moving something out of the way, so that more space can be created through the natural blood flow.
Well said. Yeah, exactly. So exactly. Maybe creating the conditions which can create more space, or something like that. Because I don't want to take credit for creating space, because that sounds really cool. And there's a lot of meaning behind that from like a Thai medicine massage perspective of like what creating space is and how you move things to create space and stuff like that. So exactly. And then that's also on like an emotional and less physical level. It's like just holding time for people, holding that space for them to hold time for themselves. I think there's a really profound therapeutic benefit in that, and so I kind of incorporate that in my knowledge or in what I do when I say that the most I do is ever hold or create space in the muscles and the tendons and the ligaments, people's lives.
Yeah.
In the blood, the mind.
So what are you looking at moving forward? Or I guess let's back up one step before I get there.
Yeah.
What has it been like venturing off from an advanced wellness center type of employment to being a business owner?
Yeah.
A business owner.
Yeah, that was, I do have to say, in terms of benefits because of COVID, because no one wanted to go out. Everyone wanted to get massages in. So that's kind of when I started building the clientele, even while I was still at Advanced Wellness. So the transition itself was actually pretty smooth. I already had a
base.
Yeah, a base, a pretty decent pool. And it's honestly, it's the freedom, because I can work less. I don't even work less. I can do more quality of work, because I'm getting paid at a more reasonable rate. Like, there is an upper limit in how much energy I can move in a day. And I also have bills to pay, and it's like a weird balance of that. So I do feel like that transition of getting out of honestly an insurance-based systemic wellness into a independent, a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of freedom, has really kind of given me the capability to kind of live the life that's most beneficial for my clients. If I'm doing it for myself, then I would just work all the time because I love it. But if I want to be the best therapist and the best healer and the best, individual I can be, it's working that balance. And so being out on my own,
giving yourself time to recharge, so that when you are working, you're providing a high level of service.
Exactly.
Got it.
So it was a little scary. It took about a year, all in all, to make that transition. But I do probably about, it's about 50-50 right now, actually. About 50% mobile in-home, and then 50% people come to my office. So it's a great balance, kind of allows me both options. And then it's nice for having more equipment. I can use hot stones, I can use hot towels, I can use all that kind of stuff, and I can also incorporate things with Reiki, or any additional alternative modalities that I maybe couldn't otherwise. So that independence has really been kind of lovely.
And then I thought of one other question before we get into the moving forward part. So I already know, I guess, a bottom line answer to this question, how you're going to answer it, but I want you to expand on that. Especially in recent years, cannabis is becoming much more accepted. And I feel like that's going to open the gates for them to consider a lot of other currently illegal and illicit substances to open up. You hear about them talking about the use of MDMA with vets with PTSD. There's already clinical trials going on with that look very promising. You see psilocybin and mushrooms popping up in places like Oregon, Portland, and DC. And I do think that there is certain, especially with drugs that are a little stronger than cannabis, like mushrooms and MDMA, potentially LSD. I do think there needs to be like a kind of a strict regulatory approach to it, so that people aren't abusing them and using them in sets and settings that are going to not help that are going to not be beneficial, right? Actually understanding, doing a little bit, at least a brief amount of research on what, how you're going to feel, like how long is it going to last, preparing yourself, basically, a certain serious intention to it. I think all of those things matter, especially when it comes to psychedelics. And then I also have a concern that you're going to see drugs that I'm personally wouldn't. I don't know that any of them should be illegal, but what do you really do with a drug like cocaine? What do you do with a drug like heroin? What do you do with a drug like meth? So that's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on just, I guess, where humanity stands in its relationship to drugs?
Yeah.
But on a more general level, it's not just drugs, but healing substances.
Yeah.
Potentially healing substances if used in an intentional manner. Yeah.
It's a great question. I'm going to speak kind of more freely because I don't have a total conceptualization of how I think is the best approach. But what speaks to my heart is full legalization of all substances, but with regulation of all substances. With the truth to me,
I'm there too.
Yeah.
But I think certain ones need even more stricter regulations than others.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I also, what feels true to me is that we are most likely overdoing all of them.
All right, this is awesome.
Please.
This is awesome. I'm glad I thought of this. So they did an experiment in the 70s. Have you ever heard of the Rat Park experiment? All right, so I was just thinking, I think the best thing to do is to create a society where people don't want the shitty drugs.
Exactly. We're blaming the individuals and the substances when really it's environmental and systemic issues.
100%. Yeah. So Rat Park was an experiment they did in the 70s. So they had done some experiments on rats in the 60s with drugs, heroin, cocaine, and other like addictive narcotics. And the way the experiment was set up is they had rats in a cage, and it was one rat in a cage, and they have a water bottle with like nutrients and other stuff to help the rat, like you would normally feed a rat. But they also had a bottle laced with cocaine. And the way the experiment went is, after a while, they get a taste of the cocaine water, and they just keep doing the cocaine. They keep doing the cocaine. And so, cocaine is the addiction, and you can't escape it. It's gonna, as soon as you touch it, you're gonna become addicted. Well, this was like in the 60s. So in the 70s, this guy comes along. I think his name was Dr. Cassiopo. He did a lot of study. He ended up spending his whole life studying the phenomenon of loneliness. And he had one of the, I guess, quotes that you kind of hear now, that he kind of brought to the forefront is, you can be in a room full of people and still feel lonely. Being alone and being lonely are two totally different things. But to get back to Rat Park, so he saw these experiments and he's like, well, look at the setup. These rats are just in a cage. They're not doing any, they don't have any access to any of the things that rats like in the natural world. So he set up what was called Rat Park. They had a bunch of other rats. They had wheels to run on. They had things to play with. They had things to eat. They had other rats to interact with. They set up the same experiment in Rat Park. None of them went after the cocaine because they had led fulfilling lives.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly right. Or that's kind of how I feel about that in terms of substances and stuff like that. It's like
people want to escape this world because this world is pretty fucking shitty.
Yeah.
At least the way that people treat each other now, and the way that certain laws are set up to where people have to pay their fucking 1099s and W-2s and insurance, and it's insane. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, we're not meant to live in. I don't think we're meant to live in a society with this complexity and organization, and it just keeps us in our intellectual minds and out of our hearts and our bodies and our connections with nature. And whether it's by design or not,
I think it is designed to disconnect us from the sun.
The
Which is the source of all of it, all of the nature, natural energies.
I feel that. Yeah, the sun and the moon. It's or we'll just say light and dark, whatever the metaphor for darkness is.
The moon is a really interesting one. As a Cancer, I find it extremely interesting.
Yeah, and that's true. When we all have our birthday. Is it the same day? Is yours the day before mine?
On the 7th.
Or the 7th? Okay, on the 22nd. Okay, we're both Cancers. That's right. That's another connection.
Yeah, the moon is just intriguing in general because it is a source of light. And then, you have conspiracy theorists arguing now that it's its own light, and it's not the sunlight's reflection. Who knows, man? The moon is really, really interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of characteristics of the moon that make it just so special.
Well, the fact that it's the exact, it can exactly cover the sun. That's regardless of how you see the flat Earth or the globe or whatever. Just the fact that from this position you look up and that thing covers it just perfectly. Something to that. Something there.
Yeah. Well, some might even just make this an argument of like some form of intelligent design.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where. Yeah, you gotta at least consider.
Yeah, at least consider it. And then so I don't think I've touched on my Reiki experience and journey. That I began in Virginia Beach at it was called the Reiki Healing Center, Reiki something center. I did my Reiki 1 there, then I did my Reiki 2 during COVID because it was like, am I going to be allowed to touch people?
This is something I'm really interested in, because to go back to that thing that Alistair said, where he kind of refrains from talking about energy and chi because he feels like it's going to alienate or he's going to turn away a certain portion of his patients, of his clientele. And but Reiki it's undeniable. You're not working with blood flow at that point. Right. But as somebody that understands it, for me, to me it's a conviction and it's a knowing, but I still have to, I feel like I still have to word it as I believe, because not everybody believes it, even if I am convinced and know it. But I believe that we are the force that moves our body and not our body ourselves. And so knowing that or believing that, I find Reiki very fascinating, because clearly there is an energy that exists in a kind of aura or a shell. You hear some people say it's like an egg. But clearly there's some sort of force going on that is invisible to a certain spectrum. And then Reiki being a modality in which you're manipulating that energy, you can't use the blood flow out at that point. Right. Like you're definitely manipulating something that's not attached to the body or part of the body in a physical way.
Right. Yeah, and so it does get into the weeds. It gets into the... I feel like if I say energy is everything, right? And some forms of energy might be immaterial. People can kind of accept that, because we have things like electricity isn't necessarily material, electromagnetic energy isn't necessarily material. So if we can kind of look at even things like dark energy, dark matter, which have kind of come into our consciousness, we're like, yeah, okay, that exists. So we already have this creeping idea of things that exist but aren't material. So all it is really just an embracing of a distinction of that.
Well, consciousness itself, I mean, from an academic, intellectual standpoint, and as someone who got a philosophy degree with that route, I don't always take pride in that because I don't necessarily feel it means anything. But they would say that materialism, or the idea of materialism, the worldview of scientific materialism, broke down when they really had to face the reality of consciousness. Consciousness. You can't deny, I mean, you can't even hold a scientific materialist worldview without your consciousness, but then that consciousness itself is kind of breaks down your so-called philosophy.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Exactly. I think Western science and philosophy really they fell into their own dualism. You know, by saying that certain things are material.
Consciousness, but yet how are you even having these thoughts? How are you even putting this worldview together without the consciousness that it takes to put it together?
Yeah. I'll share something real fun that I came across in acupuncture school so far, and I was like, how have I not come across this yet? But from a East Asian medicine perspective, consciousness, instead of being seated in the brain, which not many people think it is seated in the brain anyway, but some people do, right?
Oh man, it's funny that you say that. I like I said, I took philosophy in college, and I guess my professor really took a liking to me, but he also, like, I don't know what he was thinking by telling me. He was like, you should go talk to Professor Lambert, who was the head of the psychology department, about that. And he was like, I agree with you. You should go talk to her about that. Because he was like, I guess he had maybe had discussions with her about this before. He was being a little coy about it, you know? And then I went, and she was just like irate. You know, she was like, nothing can happen without the brain. She's like a brain.
Very neuroscience, materialistic,
everything.
Emergent type thing. Yeah, I just don't, I mean, I just, there's like, it's like, I'm fairly certain there's like documented evidence of people like learning languages from brain damage or like weird things like that. Like you can't explain that through
I mean, doesn't every cell in your body have its own brain?
Memory, its own
consciousness.
Yep, exactly.
You know, if you want to talk about brains, like, that's what the nucleus of a cell is.
Right.
I mean, it's just a microscopic or a microcosmic iteration of this gigantic one.
Yeah, and our chromosomes or our DNA, it's like the computer systems we use are binary. Our DNA is quadrary or whatever. So the complexity, the amount of information that can be overlaid in our DNA is, you know, exponentially more than the information we grasp right now.
Right.
So yeah, I do personally believe that our cells have their own, you know, memory and experiences.
I see the brain more as a transmitter.
Yeah, so I was gonna, from East Asian medicine perspective, it is marrow. It's bone marrow. It's just your biggest collection of bone marrow where the most blood kind of like ends up collecting around. Yep. It's, I believe it's called the Sea of Marrow. Maybe it's Ocean of Marrow. But then where the mind is seated is in the blood. That's not where, like, that's not necessarily what it is. It's not the blood, but it's in your blood. Like, it's kind of like attached to your blood. So in that way, your mind is circulated throughout your whole body, concentrating in different areas.
As somebody who's had a traumatic injury with my feet,
right.
I feel it. I feel consciousness in my feet all the time. It's trying to tell me I'm hurting. I need you to stretch this way. I need you to move this way. That's not my brain telling me to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
and it just shows how our whole body can be connected.
But they would argue, there would be people that would argue it is your brain.
You're receiving the nerve signals and stuff like that. I mean, and maybe it's just like a switch.
I think they're just making it complicated. It's really simple. It is what it is.
It's exactly. It is what it is. It's like it's an organ, but it's not everything. That's the big thing. You know, our thoughts, our vision, our singular experiences isn't everything. I think that can be misleading. I was honestly concerned I'd never be able to touch people again being a massage therapist when all the COVID stuff was kicking in. So then I did my Reiki 2 certification. Things kind of settled out. So then it was actually once my mom had a stroke in about 3 years ago. And as a way of wanting to provide distance healing for her, that's when I started my Reiki 3 certification. And I got that. And
so Reiki 3 includes distance healing?
Yes, yeah. So
very interesting.
theoretically, all of Reiki incorporates distance healing, because one of the symbols
that takes
or
a true
intentions,
conviction that there's a field of connection among all conscious things,
or
just consciousness being the field itself.
yeah, exactly. No, and I think that's what it is. It's really coming into a relationship with energy or space or consciousness, and recognizing, yeah, that we are all connected, and that sometimes, like, space is in most ways illusionary. It's really just the way life presents itself. So sometimes, you know, we do need to create space when we don't actually create physical space, and then sometimes we need to, you know, reach physical space, or, you know, energetic space, and still keep physical, you know what I mean? So it's like playing with space and distance is actually pretty influential in healing, you know, in the healing process. So yeah, so
that is interesting.
Yeah, that is a part of Reiki. So in theory, right, you know, there's no difference. And then that being said, you know, just speaking freely, I really feel energy. Like I'm much more in tune with the energy and other people's energy fields when I'm there physically. Because for me, when I'm feeling energy, it's a physical sensation. It feels like something evaporating off of my skin. And so, like, when I'm reading people's energy fields, I'm feeling sensations of the energy fields around me, my energy interfacing with that energy, or, you know, hopefully the energy passing through me. We talked about this pretty recently, that there's, in the field of energy work, there's really 3 ways to do it. The first one is you interface with the energy, so you meet the energy. The second one is where you work as a channel, where you know, kind of clear energy thing, and that's what Reiki, most schools of Reiki teach, is working as a clear channel. That's also massage is kind of clear channel. And then the third type is blending of energy, where you're like mixing and blending energy, which I'd really only recommend doing that with like close friends, family members, people like that, you know, those mixing of energy. So again, you can interface, you can be clear channel, or you can mix energy. And so I spent most of my life and career as a clear channel, doing my best to be a clear channel, having to have, or wanting to have, multiple different rituals of cleansing and letting go and setting new intentions.
The power of not taking anything personally.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. And it's all, that's the thing, like, even when it's personal, it's not personal. Right. You know, like, it's never personal. Yeah. Or I shouldn't say never, but like, it's not personal.
Even when it's personal to somebody else, if you don't take it personally, then it's not personal.
Yeah. There's always another layer to go to it, and, you know.
You can always choose, like, and sometimes you do choose. Like, sometimes I will choose to take it personally.
And that's okay too.
Yeah, but it's like, that's my choice, and I'm aware that I don't have to take it personally. Right. But like, this is an energy that I want to confront.
Yep.
Yeah, it needs to be confronted.
Yep.
For my like soul to feel right about it.
Yeah, because hopefully there's an opportunity for growth or challenge or something there.
Or it's just like, I know you can't use, it's hard to use a word to define the word, right? But it's just personal. It's just so personal that there's no way to not take it personally.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, I mean, again, there is a way. I don't want to say there's no way to not take it. Yeah, I could just let it go, but then that's gonna like, my life is not gonna feel right. Like some things are purpose driven. I feel like, and like any sort of goal, right? Any sort of thing that you want to accomplish in life, you have to like at least take yourself personally. Yeah. In the journey or the path that it takes to get there. Like, you have to be serious about it. You have to like practice. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Whatever it may be. But
there's a fly in your beard, so I'm gonna get it. Oh, you got it. No, you didn't. Okay. You still there? Yep, you got it. I really want to grab it.
But yeah, I mean, I guess taking it personally, I don't know. You don't have to take anything personally, and it is a superpower to not take anything personally. But I think with the awareness that you don't have to take it personally, like if you choose to take something personally, like that's your choice. Like you can confront it if it benefits your life to take it personally. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, I think you're spot on when you recognize that it's a choice. When you recognize that it's a choice. What was arising?
I take my son has autism. You know, I take his development personally, not because like I want to be sad if he doesn't succeed at something or doesn't accomplish some goal, but I just feel like taking it personally is kind of like in these cases, and it's in a case where you're choosing that you want this. Yeah. I think taking it personally is kind of the same thing as taking responsibility. Yeah. Taking accountability. Yeah.
Yep. Anyways, those are really good. No, that's exactly. I was trying to think of some way to relate it in my own way, and that was a really good way to kind of relate it. So I appreciate you sharing. Yeah, like, yeah, that taking responsibility. When you
don't have to, but then like his life isn't going to be as good. I'm going to feel bad about not being a good dad.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't have to.
Yeah.
And again, that's something that I would choose to take personally.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
That I would take upon myself to. Okay, that's personal.
Yep.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems very reasonable. Yeah. What I was thinking of, what made me think this, I really can't think of many things in life that we have to do in general.
100%.
You know, I think that kind of goes up there with shoulds and like
1,000%. 1,000% agree.
And I think letting go of that really allows for freedom in like a spiritual sense. And I also want to clarify, like when I talk about spirituality, for me, that's synonymous with change. You could just take the word spirituality out and put change in there, and we could be talking about all the same things.
So sound like my brother Aaron right there.
Yeah. And
only constant.
Yeah.
And that ain't that a paradox?
Yeah.
A constant. You think it's constant, but
right.
it's change. That
right.
is constant.
Yep. Oh, you want a fun experiment? Okay. And we may have even done this back in recall. So
talk about a balancing act.
Yeah. Change. Do we want to accept the statement that change is universal or universal constant? Do you want to accept that 100%. Statement? You're on board, right? So that means like everything changes, or roughly that means all things are changed. That means that at some point, even the fact that everything changes will change.
Ooh.
Yeah. So if that means that at some point that rule changes, that everything changes, that means that there's something that exists that never changes. And if it's existed once, then it's going to exist for potentially all of reality. And
I've never actually done it, but this sounds like one of those 5-MeO DMT trips or something.
Yeah, right?
Like,
exactly.
You just get to the base of existence.
Well, that's all it is. It's just sitting with impermanence. If you just sit with impermanence and then the impermanence of impermanence, then you get to something that is universal source. That's something that is everything and nothing. I think for me, my personal definition of it is nothing. Nothingness. Nothingness is like, or like, I don't want to say not being.
Potential.
Yeah, potential, exactly. You know, light before we see it. You know?
No, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put that. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, you know, whoever you were before you were born.
But when you say, like, before we see it, like, like the dynamic between us seeing it and it being is part of the process of it coming into being seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Interdependent, right? Yeah, exactly. Without the thing to perceive it, it wasn't there.
Creating it too.
Yeah. And that's something I've looked at a Yin-Yang symbol for so long. You know, I've seen it a million times. And it just took me, until acupuncture school to really, like, the big parts of the Yin-Yang are cool, but the really cool parts are the little circles inside of each other. Because it's that, or the big circle itself, right? And I think I was so focused on the two parts of it, seeing it as a dualism, I wasn't thinking about the fact that the other one is inside of the other one. And then when one is the most, then the other one arises.
It's a two-dimensional symbol that represents constant change.
Exactly, right?
When you look at it as a stagnant symbol, it doesn't have the same effect as seeing Kymatica.
Yep.
You know that word?
Mm-mm.
Bro, okay. If there is anything, if there is anything I want you to take away from my existence, I mentioned the guy earlier, Ben Joseph Stewart.
Okay.
He made this film in like 2009.
Mm-hmm.
To this day, the greatest link on the internet.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
And Kymatica literally means the yin-yang in action.
Oh.
I mean, I think they would define it as like the masculine and the feminine, the light and the dark. I don't know exactly how you would define it, but that's what it is.
Nice.
It's literally the life in action, the yin-yang in action.
Text that to myself.
It is, I'll send you the link.
Okay, perfect. Yep, please do.
I've got that one on saved.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
It's super
cool.
dope. You would definitely.
Yeah, I think I'd love it. I think I would love it. Yeah. It was that. Yeah, the intertransformation element of life and nature, and that's what I was thinking. Like, I'm recognizing that the majority of my mistakes in life are because I'm seeing things as fixed or discrete. Whenever I'm having most of the time I'm having difficulty, it's because I'm thinking something is fixed and not going to change.
So this conversation on a collective, societal larger, big picture scale,
Yeah.
always brings me to ritual.
To ritual, yeah.
You know, because we have rituals,
Yes.
whether they're secular
Yep.
or religious.
Yeah. Brushing your teeth is a ritual.
All cultures have
Yep.
rituals. Every individual has
Mhm.
their daily rituals,
Yep.
right? And they change with each day because
Yep.
you've done it before. You
Right.
get more experience with
Yep.
each time you do
So
it.
true, yeah.
And then for me personally, I would consider myself not just a spiritual but a religious person, because I feel that religion is uniquely human. And it kind of provides a structure for our daily rituals,
Yeah.
whether you're talking personal or
Yep.
collective.
Yep.
So although I don't subscribe to any particular religion,
Right.
it's religiosity
Yeah.
that I find fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I can really appreciate that, and I resonate with that distinguishing, you know, that just loving it for the fact that it is a creation of humanity, and yeah, and there's something about the sharing of rituals too, and being able to teach.
Talk about a balancing act. I am a member of a church.
Right. That's what I was thinking
But
about. Mm-hmm.
It's the Native American church.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which literally was always doing these rituals
Mhm.
before they incorporated as a
Mhm.
church, but they
Right.
just realized that they had to acclimate to this, or they were going to continue to get murdered and
Yeah.
just treated
Right.
so
Yeah.
horribly.
Yeah.
They found a way to make it legit, but
Mhm.
it's it was already legit.
Mm-hmm.
It just made it. They did it in such a way as to get the assholes to fuck off, basically.
Yep.
to put it in a more vulgar sense.
Yeah.
But these are rituals that date back to ancient times, whether
Right.
you're talking peyote ceremonies or ayahuasca ceremonies
Yep.
or magic mushroom ceremonies or cannabis ceremonies, or even the ones like iboga in Africa.
I don't know that one. I don't think.
So that one, from what I understand, is not as fun.
Okay.
All psychedelics have a certain potential to break people's addiction to like nicotine, alcohol, other addictive drugs, etc. Iboga has been the best at that,
Okay.
at breaking people's
Nice.
addictiveness.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But then there's even the rituals that are not necessarily psychedelic,
Right.
but they provide a certain unifying consciousness,
Absolutely.
a certain
Yep.
relational. They bring a benefit of everybody being closer,
Yeah.
just in terms of knowing each other,
Yep.
experiencing each other's energy, being more familiarizing yourself with each other, finding ways to benefit each other. Because, they didn't trade money for goods. They would trade goods for services, or services for services, or goods for goods. But there wasn't this intermediate, like very anti-life system intermediating every transaction. So I say all of that just to say that, like, that's a balancing act right there. Like being a member of a church, having a deep appreciation for religiosity, and then also seeing how currently in our culture, religion isn't exactly, but that's due to the major religions being not conducive to human happiness, from my perspective.
Agreed. Yeah.
The
agreed.
Orthodox Christians, the Orthodox, even Baptists, more Protestants.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure that there's the Unitarian Church. I've never been to one, but the mission sounds like, okay, if I was to ever go to a Christian church, it would be a Unitarian, right? But anyway, and you see the Methodists, they're coming around to being more open to the LGBT and this sort of thing. So I think that, there are pockets, and let me tell you, as somebody who grew up with my mother who, I hope she's doing all right, but she went the bad religious way. She went the Trump religious way. But I have people in my life like Mr. Monroe. I don't want to say his first name just for privacy purposes, but devout Christian and a just wonderful human being. So you can't judge people just by they're Christian or they're Muslim or whatever. Like there's good and bad people that identify as all sorts of different things.
Right. Yeah, and I want to get to the core of what are people's beliefs, which are really important. And then also how do they act.
Right.
Because that's really what matters. And how how do people view the world, and how do they act in it? What do they do? And I don't think I think most religious systems have their strengths and their deficits. Because most of them were created with the intention of trying to control masses. So there's going to be implicit issues with that.
Yeah.
I think the religions that weren't made to control the masses are things like probably the more like Native American ceremonial type things that are based around natural developmental milestones versus like.
So I just thought of this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, I just thought of this. I think spirituality is a very individual thing. I think as somebody who has a deep appreciation for religiosity, I think what religion does is it tries to create a community, a spiritual community, a group of people that are spiritual and at least have the same direction. They're at least going in the same direction, even if their views are a little different. They diverge a little in here and there in the details of life, and they should, because we all have different experiences.
Right.
But there's a certain set of rules, but not. I mean, they could be very informal.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying like the commandments.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But just a loose set of values.
I really, I love moral and ethical philosophy. I consider myself
You ever look into animal ethics?
Yeah, a lot. Yep.
Yeah.
So I consider myself a polyaxiomatic deontological negative utilitarian, which means that I don't subscribe to a singular moral system. I use a combination. I first fall into deontology, which looks at if there are shoulds in life.
That's like the Kant, right?
Yep, it's Kantian, exactly. So, which I don't believe in shoulds, but just in case there is a possibility of like maybe we shouldn't all kill each other, stuff like that. Like, okay, that falls and passes that test. But then my next is negative utilitarianism. So then I'll look at what action does the least amount of harm.
Right.
And that's what I choose to decide the criteria of what I do. Now, that being said, that also doesn't take into account at all happiness or pleasure. That's not taken into the account. So do I follow this moral system the majority of the time? No.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's impossible to systemize morality.
Right.
To begin with.
It is all just my own idea. And I was saying all that just to get to the idea that for me, it all boils down to the golden rule. Like, which is
it's
simple.
called the golden rule for a reason.
For a reason.
It really is.
Just doing unto others as you want unto yourself. And if you're brave enough, extrapolate your own consciousness. Like, put yourself in the perspective of, with the knowledge you have as a human being, put yourself in the perspective as a tree, right? Or you can just take the perspective of the tree as a tree, or if you're feeling brave, put yourself in the perspective of the tree at the knowledge of being a human. That's human. That's like bravery. That's like, that's the golden, that's like platinum golden rule to do that. But I settle with, just doing unto others as you want to do unto yourself.
So that on an individual level works, but that's why religiosity kind of intrigues me, because it's like, how do we start to implement? I think spirituality has been on the rise for a while, and people are becoming more mature and starting to face these ideas that we are God and we are connected and this sort of thing, right? But then how do we actually form a group to where we can benefit each other in the most maximum way, in the most beneficial way?
Yeah.
And I think animal ethics is really one of the keys there.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you were talking about how animals spark your interest in healing.
Yep.
I think animals can also show us how to create an ethical framework.
Yeah.
Not necessarily system. I think there's a framework is you can create systems within this framework, different systems that work in different areas. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Depending on the environment or the type of people and what your history, your historical, cultural background. So you can have different systems in different areas, but I do think there needs to be a framework.
Yeah.
And I think animals are a great teacher.
Absolutely.
When it comes to that, and I think animal ethics it's actually something I've been talking about more recently on the pod. I even did a short recently. I'll put it in the description, but there is a trilogy of books by a man named Daniel Quinn. He passed away in 2016, 2018. But man, I've loved his work. Great. I mean, he's kind of in that same Christopher Ryan, Sex at Dawn.
Oh yeah. Okay.
He read a lot of Daniel Quinn.
Okay.
So Daniel Quinn's kind of like he's kind of influential for Chris Ryan. Daniel Quinn wrote. He was always a writer, journalist, kind of in that mold his whole life. But Ted Turner as a matter of fact, put up a contest in like 1991, and it was $500,000 to who could write the best book on how to save the world. He won. The book Ishmael won.
Okay.
Still to this day, I believe it's the most prize money ever given to a single book. He ended up making it a trilogy. Mm-hmm. But he talks about a lot of different topics, and I won't go too much into it because I'm doing that separately on these readings and stuff. But the animal ethics part of it, he talks about how our culture, we tend to think of ourselves as humanity. We're not humanity. We're just one single culture that took over the globe because of insatiable greed or whatever reason you want to put behind that. He actually gives a much more. He gives it a lot more forgiveness, like a leniency, and he explains how he thinks it could have happened that way. Mm-hmm. But he talks about not agriculture specifically, not agriculture as a way of getting food, but a specific style of agriculture that he defines our culture as totalitarian agriculturalists. Mm-hmm. We literally aim to convert all of the world into human food. Mm-hmm. We separate ourselves from the world of animals in order to do this. Mm-hmm. Because if we actually lived in the web of life, we would understand that we are killing ourselves by doing this. Mm-hmm. But we're so short-sighted that we continue to do it.
Yep.
But if you look at animal ethics, there's a few sets of rules. They're not written down anywhere. Mm-hmm. The animals aren't like, oh, what's the commandments? You know what I'm saying? They're just, it's in us as animals. You can compete to the maximum extent of, food competition, but you may not wage war. And so he talks about, like, we wage war on different cultures because they don't live like us.
Yep.
Lions would never, antelopes don't think of lions as their enemy.
Right.
It's not like the lion's trying to come and wipe, but they're not going to wipe out their own food source. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? It's that's just life. Mm-hmm. One of them's going to get taken. Mm-hmm. It's just part of life. Mm-hmm. Nature of the beast, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So he talks about, food, right? So access to food. We cut off any, we've driven how many species extinct because they weren't a part of our food chain and they competed for the same food that our food competed for, or our direct food. You know what I'm saying? So we cut off access to their food. We wage total war on all of animal life that doesn't serve our food chain. Anyways, there's some consequences to that.
Yeah,
I talk about it in some of these readings that I've been doing recently.
Totally, yeah.
I think animal ethics is the framework.
I think it's an awesome framework, and to be honest, I thought you were talking about something slightly different, and I'd love to read that book and understand, what has been kind of established as that framework of like the natural.
It started 10,000 years ago with agricultural revolution. He talks about, he compares it to the early fall. When we first started doing it, we had plenty of space in the world. So and we were, we didn't have to kill other tribes. So there was plenty of space right there in the Near East. Yeah. But as we've expanded, as overcrowding became an issue, he talks about the symptoms that just kind of compound on each other. Yeah. First was overcrowding, and then, now we've got to form armies. So you never had kings and warlords and this sort of thing, but now, during that period of 5,000 BC to 3,000 BC, the only names in history are warlords. And then he talks about then economics become a problem, crime becomes a problem. Indigenous people don't have crime, not because their people are better people, but because they're not organized in such a way that crime can even exist. There's no state to step in and say, this is a crime, this is not a crime. You have to face the criminals yourself. It's a collective, that's all of it. It's a very direct democracy, is how our culture would think of it, but it's just very face-to-face.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Not that bad behavior never took place in indigenous tribes, it's just they handled it in a different way. Yeah.
What I was thinking you were referring to with the animal ethics thing was, and this is just maybe my own exposure, but I was just thinking about how potentially one of the first forms of discrimination we are taught as an individual and a species is speciesism, essentially, right? Like
100%.
We
100%.
love
That's
cats,
what he's talking.
dogs.
That's exactly gets to the root of what he's talking about there. He says mythology, cultural vision. It's something that we don't necessarily have it written down somewhere. It's just part of our lives,
right,
as we grow up.
Yep.
And so, if somebody was to ask you, "What's your culture's vision?" You might not even be able to come up like, but if you really think about it, you would be able to.
Yeah, if they just asked you like
spot,
normal questions, you just tell them, but like you couldn't tell them what it is. Yeah,
right. So he says that if you extrapolate all the ways, the way of that we live, our cultural foundational belief is that the world was made for man, and man was made to rule and conquer.
Yeah. I think that's a very like. I'm going to reduce it down to like a Anglican Christian ideology.
Yeah.
And I think it honestly, some even argue that it goes down to a mistranslation of the word dominion. When they said, man has dominion over earth. It's like, dominion doesn't mean, like
conquistador.
Yeah, it doesn't mean, like you have dominion over your children. Doesn't mean you keep them in a cage and, suck their blood, no, you take care of them, you nurture them,
right.
They teach you,
right.
like
100%.
So yeah, I think there's a compelling argument there.
Yeah, and then the flip side to that is what most indigenous cultures have lived. They didn't necessarily believe it; they just lived it, and they didn't even think of it as a belief. But they lived that man was made for the world,
right?
Rather than man was made for man. Yeah. So, anyways, that I think that really gets at the root of our culture, and then he talks a little bit about Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, exposing DDT.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He said, people expose things all the time, and they become cultural bombshells. But this one was a little different because it actually got at the root of questioning our cultural vision and questioning our mythology and that root belief of the world was made for man. Because here we are doing what we do, and the world is telling us that doesn't fit in line. You're poisoning the avian. She called it Silent Spring because the DDT had started working its way into the genome of birds and had deformed eggs. So there was a ton of species went extinct. A ton of bird species went extinct. And she was saying, like, if we continue on this path, we could wake up to a Silent Spring. Basically, birds.
Wow. Yep. Yeah, it is.
It forced us to confront the fact that our cultural vision did not align with reality itself, with life itself, and with their idea of God itself.
Yeah, it does seem like there's like this, spirit or zeitgeist someplace that is just seeing life in Earth itself as a consumable, and just to be like destroyed, and we'll just go to another planet.
Dude, but you're getting at the heart of something personal for me.
Yeah.
I went to college. I was very good at math growing up. Very logical, rationally inclined. My dad always envisioned me being like a CEO of a bank or some shit like that, right? Went to college, business, economics, accounting. That was how I was going to go. Thank God I had a professor who was actually the chair of the economics department, but he was a very heady, conscious kind of guy. And he told me, I think he wanted me to double major in business economics and ethics as a minor. Of course, the ethics course was technically a philosophy course. And I fell in love with it and ended up as a philosophy major and economics minor, which I don't think he wanted me to still keep the economics major, but ironically, it's his fault because he was the one that pushed me in that direction. He was like, "You're a big picture thinker. I think you would really like, take an ethics course and maybe some philosophy courses." And I fell way harder in love with it than I think he expected. But to get to what you're talking about the consumable thing, there was a economics class. I had already been thinking that I was going to drop the economics major and major in philosophy, but there was one semester, my first semester of my junior year, and I'm already considering making the switch. First semester of my junior year, I took environmental economics and environmental ethics.
Oh boy!
At the same time.
Talk about yin and yang.
Yeah. Environmental Ethics was a great book. It really, opened up me how I see relationships with the world itself, with other people, with society. It had the effect on me that I think, in general, people like to think that college has the effect on people.
Right.
It just opens them up to the world.
Yep.
It piques their curiosity.
Yep.
Right. Whereas environmental economics, it kind of shut me down. It kind of it was the only C I got in college. All A's and B's. That one environmental economics was the only C I got because I couldn't. Their only lens of the environment is how do we best manage the environment? How do we best manage these resources? Not how do we have a relationship with the environment. Not how do we have because the world is dead. It's natural. It is nothing but natural resources from that particular economic perspective. That's it.
Yep.
So it's the whole class. In my mind, I'm like, we shouldn't even be looking at it through this lens. How am I going to take all these details seriously when I don't even think that the lens that all these details are coming out of, your premise is wrong. All this shit you're talking about is bullshit. So I couldn't get into it. And that was when I decided, all right, I need to finish my major with this philosophy degree, and I already had enough credits by then for an economics minor, so I just stopped. That was the last. It was not only the only C I got in college; it was the last economics course I took in college. Because I'm done. Done. It didn't. You're not even looking at it through the right lens. How can I take you seriously?
Yeah, I like that. If your premises are faulty, I can't go with your conclusions. So it just makes no sense to me.
It's just like Charlie Brown to me. Nothing that you're saying means anything because you're looking at it through a destructive worldview. You're going to destroy yourself if you keep acting this way. If you keep living this vision. So, anyways, this has been awesome, dude.
If
you got anything else you want to talk about?
That's what I was just thinking. I was like, is there anything I wanted to kind of mention or talk about? I think I touched on a little bit everything: massage, Reiki, some acupuncture.
What do you see? Year goal, 3-year goal, 5-year goal for your business? What healing modalities do you see as most effective for what ailments or what conditions? So for example, anxiety and depression, what do you think is the best modality for that? What do you think is the best modality for lower back pain? Some of these more common issues. Just glance over a few of them that you see.
Yeah, I'll speak kind of on multiple different levels about all those conditions. So first of all, I definitely think whatever therapeutic you get a significant therapeutic value from your level of comfort and relaxation, your capability to go inward. So whichever modality you're going to probably feel the most comfortable with in that regard is going to at least begin that path of maximizing benefits. I'll talk just strictly on a research-based perspective at first. From so something like neck pain, I would probably recommend, from a research-based perspective, massage is the most effective. Chiropractic can also be effective as well, but massage is actually slightly more. And to get the most effect, you want to do them together. And then I also say that acupuncture might also be beneficial, probably dry needling just as much for neck pain specifically. Acupuncture is just to change it on that again, it's really the coolest. It's about getting to the root of issues. So just for an example, say someone is having liver issues. From a Western perspective, or from traditional Western medicine perspective, you might immediately address the liver. Start giving it different, medicines of some sorts, or maybe a transplant. But from East Asian medicine perspective, what you would do is you'd actually work with the organ that nourishes the liver, so the mother of the liver, to help heal the liver. So you'd go with the kidneys. So it's always going one layer deeper and going to the root of it. So when we're talking about things like anxiety, depression, acupuncture is fantastic for those kind of things, because it's going to go deeper than medicine, which is really good. Even Western medicine, pills can be actually good to get to a workable level, but I'd never think that should be the end goal. that should just be a stepping stone to get to the deeper layers that we can,
But a lot of times when they're prescribed, they're not prescribed with any sort of plan.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, I think every single medication,
90+% of the time, there's no plan to get off of them.
Right, because there's no incentive for that for the pharmaceutical companies, for practitioners, like any of them. And none of them get paid for not seeing clients, which is, I think, an issue. So that being said, I do think acupuncture is fantastic for every condition, honestly. You know, any kind of internal conditions, any kind of external conditions, cold, lower back pain is actually really good. Shoulder pain, frozen shoulder. Frozen shoulder, it also recommends dry needling and massage. Let's see. Chiropractic does have good outcomes for lower back pain, some of the most compelling and best. The only thing is it takes a long time. It takes almost 5 to 6 months.
Consistent
adjustments. Yeah. I think that I'm pulling this number out of my butt, but it was like 40-something visits. Oof. So if you're going twice a week, that's almost half a year.
Yeah.
But they do have higher rates of resolution than massage, but most massage trials aren't going for 6 months. They're going for, usually 2 months.
Right.
So
8 massages.
Yeah, exactly. Usually 8 massages. So massage does also have good outcomes if you, especially if someone knows what they're doing. I think as massage therapists, lower back, unless there's been a direct insult or injury, is mostly symptomatic of other areas, usually the lower extremities. So I'm going to spend a lot more time on the legs, the calves, the feet, the ankles, the glutes, the hamstrings, the quads, all of those muscles, and then I'm just going to touch the lower back, just to let it know that it's all okay, because that's really how you're going to maximize therapeutic benefit. Similarly for neck pain, their upper back and neck pain, again, oftentimes it's sleeping postures or sustained postures and stuff like that, but most of the time it's from having arms up and forward or down or shoulders and that kind of thing. So, a good therapist is going to address you holistically, similar to like a good acupuncturist is going to address you holistically. Reiki, I recommend doing twice a year, and again, we're just kind of talking about ritual, just having a way, at least twice a year, to kind of help assess yourself on your journey. I usually recommend doing it around your birthday and then usually around 6 months from then, but it can totally be to whatever frequency floats your boat. And I also truly believe that Reiki is really a system of self-care. So I spend almost the majority of my first session educating my clients about all of the symbols. I don't keep them secret. And then we go over all the chakras, and I go over how I do the things so that if people want to practice at home, they can do it themselves. Because I think, just applying these concepts of...
So how do the symbols translate into healing?
Yeah. So they each have an intention associated with it. Jeez, can I remember it? Sorry.
Is there a sound associated with the symbol?
Yeah, I believe there's a sound. Well, there's a vocalization, and then there's a specific symbol, and then there's probably a sound. There's definitely a frequency. Yeah, frequency. Yeah, each one has a frequency. And it's fun. The symbol, I will say, it reminds me of sign language. It's like the symbol is very symbolic of what the energy itself does. It's like if a kid was to finger paint that's kind of what it would look like. So the first one is energy. Then the second, so if something needs more energy, stagnation, stuff like that. Next is mental and emotional healing. Then it is distance. Then it is, these are not in order. So distance. Then one is, it's called the master symbol. So it's essentially I don't know exactly what this area needs.
Is that your heart or your solar plexus? Oh, so it's different symbols can be applied to different areas.
Yes. See, these are the 5 main symbols that can be applied to the areas, and you apply them to the 7 chakras.
I was thinking each chakra had a symbol.
Oh, they do. Every
but there's
chakra.
Also symbols that are the actual healing modality that gets applied to each chakra.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. And it just kind of helps clear channels.
How do you use the symbols?
I just sit there and I set the intention. So I visualize the symbol sometimes. Sometimes I look at it, and then usually I close my eyes though, and I visualize it, and then I just repeat the word over and over and over again, and then it becomes like a mantra, and then I just kind of allow whatever to arise. And then what I'll usually do first though, there's definitely patterns to each chakra and which symbol is most beneficial to them. So I might try those symbols first, just based on experience. But otherwise, I go through all 5 symbols. I sit with each of them, and I see which one it wants. And then whichever one it wants, I sit there with it until it doesn't want it anymore.
And you can tell what it wants by their subtle
any kind
movements.
of response. Yep, any kind of response, exactly. So yeah, subtle movements of energy flow. And it really,
deep breaths or something.
Or a deep breath. Yep. Usually, I'll just feel like some shift in energy flow, whether that be breathing, just some
Maybe
form
kind
of
of like adjust their arm or something.
Yep. Sometimes it's physical, and then sometimes it's more or less, but something always happens or frequently happens, and then we sit there with it until it feels right. And then I'm also really big on assessment, so I read the chakras first, provide the services, do the assessment, and then usually do another round of services based on what changed. Because I'm all about change, right? Like, I want change. I don't care about change. I'm not attached to change. Change is life. But, I recognize that there's some value in that. So I'm really big on assessment. I like to look at the change. And even in massage, too. Like I do a stretch, their knee pops, do a little something, do a stretch, their knee doesn't pop anymore. Yeah, I'm really big on making immediate change or finding where I have capabilities for doing immediate change and then backing away. I don't need to do anything more than that. I'm just showing what's possible. And so that's usually all you got to do for Reiki. Most people's energy is restricted in a way that makes sense. Well, everyone's energy is restricted in a way that makes sense for their lives. So, all I do is just kind of see decode it. Exactly. It's a perfect way to say it. And most of the time people cry because they feel very heard and understood, and that's it. You've opened up the capabilities for healing.
Might have to try a session with you.
Yeah.
Damn good at massage, so
yeah.
I know you take whatever you do seriously.
I do my best. And I don't do as many Reiki as I would like to. On a more busy, I'll do it probably once a week, but right now it's probably every other week, maybe once a month right now. So it is something I want to do more of, but I do it every day as a form of self-care, because at the end of the day, you never know what little tethers of energy, people, places, things, and sometimes it's not even intentional, right? It's not like someone's intentionally thinking about you and stuff like that, but like maybe they are, and I don't necessarily want that energy tether. So I do have like a kind of a closing off ceremony at the end of every day, and just things to make sure that I keep my energetic boundaries, because otherwise just little things happen. So
you gotta do that. Mm-hmm. So if anybody listening wanted to book a Reiki or a massage session, where can they find you?
Sure, thank you for asking. So my website is www.dantian.energy. That's DANTIAN.energy. I'm on Instagram at Dantian Energy, and Facebook as well. That's the easiest way to book online, but you can also reach out. As mentioned, I'm an acupuncture school, so my schedule's a little wonky, so please also feel free to reach out if you don't see anything available through online scheduling, especially if you're interested in mobile in-home massage, because I don't hold those hours available. But yeah, that's the primary way to find me. I'm working on more content creation too, for both my business and personally. So hopefully see a little bit of that in the future as well.
Nice.
Yep. Thank you, brother.
Awesome,
this is amazing.
Love you, man.
Love you. So much love. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
yes,
I really
sir.
appreciate it.
Peace out, peeps.
Peace.
Do you believe in repenting? What if the kingdom of heaven's within you? Do you think you would enter, huh? What do you know, huh? How do you know truth from the pit of your soul, or just cause somebody told you? Do you think about what you think about? Do you see yourself in the people that you hang around? Keep quiet, let me think aloud. Listen up, wanna break it down and question your perceptions. I'ma break it down and question your perceptions. Do you ever question your perceptions? Do you ever question it? Oh yeah. What if your money was worthless? Then would you know what your worth is and reconsider living with a purpose? How would you determine what work is? Are you seeking what's easy to purchase, or is it deeper than what's on the surface? Do you question your perceptions? Ever so is real, huh? It ain't your politicians, nor your status. All of that is fiction, so it's real, huh? It ain't your entertainment, Know the industry I heard is filled with fake shit. And I need truth over everything. Yeah. I need truth above all else. Just I need truth over everything. Yeah, give me the truth, give me the truth, give me the truth, yeah.